because he wants a bigger army, not because he wants to share the good news of who Jesus is. Jesus says it, we do it. And yet Judas questions every single step of the way.
Animal fat.
Now listen to that as well. Did you hear that? They do this 3 times. Okay, this is a very significant number. All right, going through season 4, episode 1 of The Chosen, going through our deep dives. I hope you enjoyed our last one. There was a lot of information in there, so if you missed it, definitely go back and check that out. But now we're going to check out probably my favorite portion of this first episode. And it's a small scene, it's not too massive, but there are a lot of really, really key things in here that are hidden within this section that just, they pay off so well throughout the rest of the season. And I think it just does an amazing job of setting everything up right here in the beginning of the season here. So let's check this out. Check out this scene right here with Simon the Zealot and Judas.
You really never done this before?
My dad and I always had the laundry sent out.
And you have no savings left.
I had to divest my shares in the company in order to follow Jesus.
So, first things first, we have a scene here of Judas and Simon the Zealot doing laundry. This pairing is so good. I love this pairing because they have so much in common and yet they are so different that it makes it such a perfect grouping for this specific conversation. Now, also, I will say that historically and culturally, there are some people that believe that both of these men were actually zealots. That not only Simon the Zealot, who is named in scripture as that, but also that Judas could have been a part of the Sicarii order as well, which would have been a zealous order, a zealot order there within the Jewish society. So some people do believe that both of these men could have been zealots. However, we don't really know the truth of that. It's just kind of a guess through how Judas acts and how he is, how he's pushing Jesus into the Roman people, basically, trying to get him to overthrow them and all these different things. So we're seeing here how Judas and Simon the Zealot are very similar in the fact that they both have lives previously to this that they really need to give up on and walk away from. However, we're seeing that they're both led to the same crossroad and maybe make some different decisions on that. And so let's walk through this scene, and there's some really, really key things that I want to talk about here.
Wise choice.
Sure, I mean, that's an understatement. But one wise decision only highlights how much practical wisdom I don't have. Like how to wash clothes.
Well, lucky for you, it's not that hard.
What is that?
Some salts, oil extracted from plants, and animal fat.
So here we see that the detergent that's used here is some different salts and different unique additives along with animal fat, and this would have been during the day that they obviously would have used like this, and so this is how they would do laundry. This is a key point for sure.
I wish I hadn't asked.
So we're seeing here, it's highlighting Judas's uppityness, right? He's used to being wealthy, he's used to being taken care of, and he is not used to doing the dirty work himself. A lot like Matthew, right? But Matthew was willing to kind of dive into this, whereas Judas is not so much.
Have to state it well. See, it's saturated.
I love the CGI here as well. Obviously, the other side of this lake doesn't exist at all, but I think they do a really great job of adding it in here and making it look real.
Good. I'll take the garment.
And it looks a lot like the Sea of Galilee, although it wouldn't be shaped like this. The Sea of Galilee, looking from Capernaum, does not look like this. It looks you're looking too far south a little bit, if that makes sense, but close.
Out. And dip it into the source water.
You know, if our funds weren't so low, we could hire people to do the wash, giving us more time to get to the real work and expanding the ministry.
How would that look to people?
Like we're maximizing the time and resources to our task of building the kingdom of the Messiah.
Do you think the followers of Jesus would not do mundane tasks?
You're imagining a contingency for something unsaid.
Now, this is giving us an insight into who Judas is, okay? Judas is talking about how they should be hiring someone for this, right? They could be hiring someone for this. And Simon the Zealot says something that's very key. He says, so should the followers of Jesus not be doing mundane tasks? Remember the mindset that Judas has, okay? The mindset that Judas has throughout all of the chosen so far is that Jesus is the Messiah, number one, and number two, Jesus will have an earthly kingdom where he will destroy the Romans and we will be a part of that kingdom. Okay, we're going to get more insight on this at a later time, but for now, you have to understand that Judas's mindset here is incredibly important, right, for who he is and what is actually happening throughout this entire season and, of course, into the future seasons where we know he's going to betray Jesus. So where is he going from here? He has a misunderstanding in the core part of why he's following Jesus in the first place, okay? So let's keep on going through this, but we can see that Judas is not looking in the correct direction. He's really falling apart here in terms of what Jesus has asked him to do, the opportunities that Jesus has given him, and where he's going instead of that.
Jesus' books, Z. We should be out there, spreading the word, gathering more followers.
This is what the people we talk to do.
Why does Judas want to spread the word and gather more followers? Because he wants a bigger army, not because he wants to share the good news of who Jesus is. Hey, real quick, I wanted to interrupt the episode and let you know that less than 1% of the people that watch our channel actually help to support us in doing what we're doing here. That's okay. If you can't afford to help support us, that's totally fine, and watching this video is more than enough. But if you do want to help us do what we do here on YouTube, it would make it a lot easier if you guys would go over to snipesupport.com and help us to continue to make videos just like this and what we do over on the Snipe Life YouTube channel. Anyway, we love you guys so much, and it's a huge privilege to be able to do this as my job. It's crazy that I even get to say that. So thank you for whatever you decide to do, whether you continue to watch here, or if you go to snipesupport.com and sign up for as little as $5 a month. It would mean the world to me to see you over there. Anyway, let's continue on with the video.
Laundry. If we appear too lofty or important for daily tasks, we will no longer be relatable. So, you ball up the garments.
So to be clear, here they've done one wash so far. We're going to come back to that in a second.
And knead it hard against the rock. Knead it? Harder. It gets the water out and dislodges any dirt that is collected in between the fibers.
Look, I'm not saying there couldn't be a perception problem. I'm just saying we could cross that bridge when we get to it. For now, we could do more if we had more funding.
There's Zebedee's olive oil business.
Which has not brought in a shekel.
Yet. Judas, you are learned,
Oh, thank you.
but you are not wise.
That's key, I think, here too, to who Judas is. Judas, you are learned, but you are not wise. And this is something that probably cuts Judas to the core, because he prides himself on being an intellectual, someone who is smarter than everybody else, and he thinks he's the smartest person in the room at all times, and that's including when he's in the room with Jesus, right? He thinks he's smarter and knows how to do things more efficiently, and this is his gift. That's how he sees himself here.
Oh, okay. Thanks for that. I like the learned part.
You have dedicated your life to a teacher, yes?
He walks on water and commands the wind and waves, but sure, he's a teacher.
And yet you are overlooking his lessons.
Yeah, I think in Judas's mind, he probably thinks of him more as a king or as a warrior than a teacher. Yeah.
I find faults in something you don't understand. There is a lesson in everything he shares.
Now, this is huge too. Simon the Zealot says there is a lesson in everything he shares. And that, of course, is a kind of meta way of saying, hey, listen to what I'm talking to you about. This moment is important for you. And Judas completely misses it here.
And asks,
Fine. Where do I start?
you rinse away what was scrubbed out, you're making the garment new again.
Now, of course, everything that Simon the Zealot is saying here is from the perspective of Jesus, because Jesus wants Simon to teach Judas here what is actually going on. So we see that Simon is saying, you're going to take the garment, you're going to rinse it out the first time, you're going to put it back in the source water, you're going to take it out, then you're going to help to separate, right, the dirty parts and leave that behind and take what is clean forward, right? This is a metaphor for their lives, for not only Judas's life, but also for Simon the Zealot's life. Back in season 2, when he began to follow Jesus in episode 4 or episode 5, we see that he drops the dagger, right? And he leaves his old life behind. He is no longer a zealot. He is no longer what he used to be. He is who Jesus asked him to be now. But Judas has never really had that moment, at least not clearly.
And now, my favorite part. This is for the most stubborn bits of what was there before.
Now, I think this is potentially a metaphor as well, that sometimes when you're leaving your old life behind, parts of this could hurt. And it's going to take a lot of effort and pain for you to leave those things behind and to follow Jesus instead.
Ultimately, it helps it dry faster.
You know, I always wondered why you'd never stink, even though you'd always exercise all the time. And even sweat is no match to your strength when it comes to this part.
You can tell whenever Simon the Zealot is talking, it's like a completely different understanding than what Judas has. Judas is really focused on this laundry, but he's not focused on the lesson to be learned by the laundry.
Well, I have to do something with my physical strength now that I don't need it anymore, or at least not the way I thought I would.
You see? You have it too.
Have what?
An old way of being in the world. And you left it behind, but you can't really shake all of it. So you've adapted it.
Third and last rinse. I'm not sure I follow.
I left behind.
So they just finished the second rinse. Just to be clear, we'll catch up on that in a bit. Then we see as Simon and Judas realize that they're both similar, right? This is why Jesus sent them out together. Because Simon had a life before that he had to give up. He could not congruently be a follower of Jesus and a zealot at the same time. And at the same time, Judas can't be what he used to be as a businessman and doing all these things on his own and being selfish and be a follower of Jesus at the same time. It just cannot happen, right? So those two things need to be fixed. They need to be separated from each other in order for them to work better. And so we're seeing that here play out as we're watching them talk about this whole laundry thing here. But Simon the Zealot disagrees because Judas is basically saying, hey, you're just like me. You're having doubts just like me. You don't know how to use your strength anymore. But Simon the Zealot is basically saying, no, I think I've given all that up, actually. I'm actually not that person anymore. Because we dealt with a lot of that in season 3 as well, as the Zealots came back to Simon and kind of confronted him. And so he really left that life behind.
Behind a way of life. And even though I'm living radically different than before, I just can't stop seeing how we could be doing things faster and more efficiently.
Were you asked to run it more efficiently?
No, just to keep the purse.
Then keep the purse.
I love how Simon has simplified this so much. Jesus says it, we do it. And yet Judas questions every single step of the way.
But Z, all the people he fed in the Decapolis, they weren't all poor. Some were just far from home with nothing to eat. If we had taken up a collection of just 10% of the 5,000, 10%, accepted a fraction of people's offerings of gratitude, those who could afford it, we wouldn't be in such dire straits waiting to do important work until...
Now remember, these words that Judas is saying, as he's saying, hey, why aren't we taking up a collection? Why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we doing that? These partially are Hadad's words. Judas's mentor. Remember back in season 3, at the beginning of season 3, when he's about to leave and go follow Jesus, Judas isn't worried about any of this. He wasn't worried about taking up a collection. He wasn't worried about doing all these different things. He was just worried about following Jesus. But then somewhere along the way, all of that gets mixed up, right? Somewhere along the way, all of that becomes less important to him. And now he's focused on the details of it all, right? He's not trusting Jesus anymore to just provide the way. He's trying to figure out what to do. If we had just taken a collection, that's the same thing that Hadad said during the Sermon on the Mount. So now he's kind of echoing those words of Hadad, which, of course, is not a great thing.
Revenue kicks in from Zebedee's olive oil.
If he wanted to take up an offering, he would have. But he didn't. You're asking why he didn't do it the way that you would have done it before you met him.
The old me would have sold the loaves.
Should be asking to whom his charity was a lesson.
I believe his word.
So Judas is like, the whole time here, during this whole conversation, this is what I'm thinking. Judas has gone halfway, but he is not willing to go full in, right? He's gone to the point of, at least I didn't sell the loaves that were made miraculously, right? I was just asking for an offering. That's good enough, right? But Jesus didn't ask for any of that, right? So he's not going far enough. He's not understanding Jesus all the way. He's kind of half into this following, and he's not going the full rest of the way.
And his lessons. They changed my life, but...
So let's go back here real quick. I want to get this little thing that he says here.
Before you met him.
The old me would have sold the loaves.
Should be asking to whom his charity was a lesson.
I believe his words. And his lessons.
So here Simon says, you should be asking yourself to whom his charity was a lesson. Was it a lesson for them, the people that eventually are going to run away from Jesus anyway? Or was it a lesson for his apostles? Was it a lesson for Judas in particular, right? And yet he misses that lesson over and over and over again. And here's another instance of Judas missing that lesson from Jesus. Jesus has sent him to do the laundry on purpose for this moment, and yet he's missing it again. Now Judas responds here with, I believe in his teachings and his lessons, right? I believe in all of it. And the verse that came to mind for me was actually right here in James. James says, you do well to believe that God is one. You believe that God is one. You do well. Even the demons believe and shudder, right? So this shows that just because you believe does not mean that you are good, right? Just because you believe does not mean that you are a follower of Jesus in the way that he wants you to be a follower of Jesus. And so it's got to be more than that, right? For Judas, it has to be more than him falling into this and hoping that it works out well. It has to be more than him going into this and just being like halfway and wanting to do things his way. He needs to fully, completely surrender, because if he doesn't, he's never going to follow Jesus in the way that he should, right? And so this is a key moment for Judas. And of course, throughout all of this season and next season, we're going to see really key moments for Judas, because obviously he's going to come to a point where he decides, no, I'm not going to do it your way. I'm going to do it my way, right? I'm not going to do it the way that you want me to, Jesus. I'm going to do it my way. And that has to be good, right? I have to do it this way because I think that that's what's right. And so Judas obviously makes the wrong decision in that way.
They changed my life, but they're not where this ends. He's the Messiah, Z.
I know.
It's interesting because this isn't really a spoiler, but I think throughout this entire season, I think that Judas says he is the Messiah more than any other character. And yet, he is the one who doesn't understand how the Messiah is supposed to be. And so it's really, really interesting here.
Do you? If he is the son of David, and if he is to fulfill Isaiah's prophecy that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established on top of the mountains and be exalted above the hills and all nations flow to it, it's time to move faster. He won't be king by amassing no resources or power. It's unheard of.
He's unheard of.
So you see there again, Judas's mindset. He won't become king if he doesn't amass power and an army and people and all this stuff, right? It's unheard of. Of course, he's unheard of. He's the Messiah. He's the Son of God, right? Completely different than any other king ever was and ever will be.
Prophesied but never seen.
Prophesied but never seen. Such a good line there. I love that line.
Still dirty, Judas.
Now here as well, let me back up a few seconds, and I want you just to listen to the music here. Again, we hear Judas's theme. Ba, ba, ba. It's the first set of notes, and then there's another set, 3 after that. You can hear this line all the way, anytime that Judas has a moment of decline or putting him in the position to fail, this theme kind of comes up. It's like in Star Wars where we have like Leia's theme or Luke's theme or different things like that. This is Luke Dimian's theme here.
It's time to move faster. He won't be king by amassing no resources or power. It's unheard of.
He's unheard of. prophesied but never seen.
Right there.
Still dirty, Judas.
Come on, Z. It's my first time. Plus, I'm not as strong as you.
Then put your ingenuity into it. Jesus asks
There's
us
the
to get
second
it
set.
done. There is a reason.
Are you sure about that?
So really, really clearly, we're seeing here Judas is not on the right path. We're seeing Simon the Zealot say, your clothes are still not clean. You didn't do this properly. In other words, through the metaphor that we've been seeing throughout this entire scene, you are not ready to walk this path. You have not chosen correctly in the path of Jesus and what you're supposed to be doing.
Because I'm pretty sure clean clothes are their own virtue.
It will become more clear. When I was new to this, I had some tough lessons to learn, believe me.
Animal fat.
Now listen to that as well. Did you hear that in the music? The Judas theme evolves here. So not only are we getting that da-da-da, but listen to what we hear there as well.
When I was new to this, I had some tough lessons to learn, believe me.
Listen to the music. You hear that?
Animal fat. How? Wouldn't there be chunks?
No, it's
So within the theme of Judas now, we're also getting the 30 silver coins starting to come into play. So that betrayal is getting closer and closer and closer. We're hearing the coins be a part of that. That's so genius. I love that in the music there. Now they're talking about the animal fat here, how they separate the animal fat from the solid pieces versus the liquid pieces in order to use it for a detergent. This is important as well.
heated and melted and run through the sieve to separate the solid from the liquid fats. Sort of like when you sift wheat to get rid of the impurities, to separate the good grain from the bad.
So separate the good grain from the bad, separate the impurities from what is pure. This again is part of that whole metaphor. It's just hammering it home here, really showing that this is who Judas is. He is not separating the pure from the impure. He is trying to mix the pure and impure in order to make the pure better, and that's not how it works. Right? Now, if we go back to the beginning of this whole section here, we see that when they're washing the clothes, they do this 3 times. Okay, this is a very significant number. Okay, throughout all of what we see in scripture, when something is done 3 times, it's kind of like a legal number. So things are kind of set in stone. So whenever you wash your clothes 3 times, it should be done. It should be finished. It should be executed perfectly, right? For example, whenever we press olives, there's a first press, a second press, and a third press of olives. This is also going to lead into the Garden of Gethsemane with Jesus, okay? Because he prays once, twice, and 3 times, and then he is sweating drops of blood. Okay, all of this is connected because in the Garden of Gethsemane, that means olive press. Okay, Gethsemane, it's olive press. Okay, this is the place of the olive press. So that is, it's all tied together here. I think this is very intentional that they did this clothing cycle here 3 times. They washed everything perfectly the way that they wanted it and kind of laid it in that way. And this, of course, is going to lead to the Garden of Gethsemane later on in the next seasons and what's going on there. Yeah, there's so much stuff that's just connected through all of this. I love that musical note, though, of Judas adding in the theme, but also adding in the coins and getting closer and closer to that. Such a cool scene here. Such an amazing scene of Simon the Zealot being able to kind of teach Judas and help him through this moment, but Judas chooses not to go along with it. He chooses not to follow because his mind is so set on who Jesus needs to be. His mind is so set on who the Messiah needs to be that none of this fits for him. None of this works for him. And so, man, it's super interesting. This was a well-written scene for sure. I loved this scene here. Probably my favorite part of episode 1. If you've made it this far in the video, chances are you really love The Chosen and you want to see more deep dives into The Chosen and other Christian media projects. So this is what YouTube thinks you'll like next. Go ahead and click on that and check that one out.